Join us as we explore the invisible energy system running just beneath your skin.
Mapping the vital streams that bridge our physical bodies with the deeper planes of life.
I'm Elliot.
And I'm Nadia.
Welcome to the Etheric Double by Arthur E. Powell. Here's the thing that's true and that nobody thinks about at breakfast. Your eyes see a sliver of everything that's actually arriving at your face right now. Radio, infrared, ultraviolet, the whole roaring spectrum. Your eyes pick up one thin band and call it the world. Your dog hears a world you don't. A bee lands on a flower and sees patterns on the petals, runway markings, that are simply not there for you. Not hidden, just off your dial.
So the question was never really, is there more than we see? There's obviously more than we see. The question is only ever whether the dial can move.
And that's this episode, episode 9, chapters 21 and 22. And they're a pair with one lovely shape. Two completely different ways of coming to see the etheric world. From the outside in, with a physician in a London hospital, no clairvoyance, no claims, just colored glass and patience. And from the inside out, the faculty itself, etheric sight, what it is and what it opens, the lab and the eye. And the payoff of the pairing, which we'll get to, is that they meet in the middle and describe the same thing.
So introduce us to the man in the lab, because I've grown weirdly fond of him.
Dr. Walter J. Kilner. And he's worth being fond of. A medical man published a book in 1911 called The Human Atmosphere, describing years of investigating the human aura by purely physical means. And the book takes care with two facts about him. First, he expressly disclaimed any clairvoyant power. None. He wasn't a sensitive making claims. He was a doctor with an idea. And second, and this is the detail that tells you who he was, he deliberately didn't read any of the existing accounts of the aura until he'd already examined more than 60 patients. He wanted his own results uncontaminated by anyone's descriptions, including the theosophists.
He blinded his own study in 1911. That's a careful man.
And he insisted the method was purely physical, and that anyone willing to take the trouble could use it. So, the method. He made screens, thin, flat glass cells, filled with an alcohol solution of a dye called dicyanin, different colors for different purposes. And the basic procedure is 2 steps. You look through a dark screen at the light for half a minute or so, and then you look at the patient through a pale screen. And, he reports, you find you can see the aura.
Just like that. What's the dye actually doing?
Changing the eye is his conclusion, sensitizing the retina to a band it normally ignores. Because here's the strange part. With use, the effect stops being temporary. Eventually, operators could see the aura without any screens at all. The training stuck. The dial, once moved, stayed moved. And the book adds his warning. The screens are hard on the eyes. They can become quite painful. Real care is needed. This was not a parlor trick. It cost him something to look.
Night vision goggles for the aura, with side effects. And what did he see once he could look? Because this is where it gets properly exciting.
He saw the aura in 3 distinct parts, and he named and measured all 3. Innermost, hugging the body, following its contours exactly, a narrow, dark band. Uniform width, somewhere between a 1/16 and 3/16 of an inch. Transparent and finely striated, streaked through with delicate lines of a beautiful rose color, probably self-luminous. And he called that band, his own coinage, working blind, remember, the etheric double.
He arrived at nearly the same name on his own. And the other 2 parts? Let me read the findings because I want everyone tallying along. Part 2. What he called the inner aura. 2 to 4 inches deep, following the body's shape, relatively wider in children. Granular and striated. The striations gathered in bundles standing at right angles to the body, so the outline scallops. The densest part of the whole aura and, mark this, broadest and most distinct in people in robust health. And part 3, the outer aura. Wider, variable. 4 or 5 inches at the sides of the trunk. Structureless. No grain, no lines, just a haze, fading into space with no sharp edge. So tally it. A thin band hugging the skin, about a 1/4-inch scale, faintly rose-lined. A dense, bristling, striated layer a few inches deep, strongest in the healthy. And a wide, structureless outer haze drifting away.
And Powell does exactly that at the end of the chapter, and it's the quiet climax of this whole stretch of the book. Kilner's narrow, dark band, his etheric double, is the etheric double, the same one, seen edge on where it projects past the skin. Kilner's inner aura, granular, striated at right angles, strong in health, that is point for point the health aura from the spleen chapter. The bristling defensive glow, the straight lines that droop when you're run down. He even saw the striation fade in illness, which is our drooping lines, measured by a man who'd never read the clairvoyant account of them. And the outer aura, structureless, spent, drifting off into space, Powell identifies as the discharges, the used particles from the exhaust chapter, leaving.
So a hospital physician with dyed glass, refusing to read the literature, working from 60 patients, independently mapped the same 3-layer anatomy the clairvoyants had been describing all along. Same layers, same order, same link to health. And that's the thing I want everyone to actually sit with today. Because you can hold this book at arm's length and say, well, it's all just what sensitives claim to see. And then along comes the one man determined to do it with no sensitivity at all, and he draws the same picture. The inner road and the outer road meeting. That's not proof, and Powell doesn't call it proof. This book never argues. But it's the two windows looking into the same room. And that's worth a moment of quiet satisfaction.
And Kilner's purpose in all of it, the book stresses, was diagnosis. He cataloged how the aura changes with the person, and the catalog is worth hearing.
It differs by sex. The female aura, widest at the waist and the small of the back. By age, children's proportionally broader. By mind, and this one's striking. The more intelligent the person, the larger and bluer the aura. The duller, the grayer. The best form, he thought, was a clean, egg-shaped oval. Fineness and transparency marking the higher type. And then, disease. A contraction of the inner aura, he found, invariably means grave illness. The earliest warning sign of trouble before anything else shows is the loss of that fine striation, the grain coarsening. Hysteria and epilepsy each reshape the aura in their own recognizable ways. He was reading the field the way another doctor reads a chart, which is exactly what the healers in our audience do every day, scanning before treating. There's a whole modern practice standing where Kilner stood.
And two last Kilner findings that point straight at our earlier chapters. He found rays, bright streams projecting from the body, sometimes from one part to another, armpit to wrist along a bent arm, sometimes straight out into space. And when he held his own hand near a patient, the two auras brightened and a ray formed between them, bridging. And, the finding I love most, rays could be projected deliberately, by an effort of will, and even their color could be willed. Blue came easiest, yellow was hardest. Will, directing the vital current, visible through a piece of dyed glass. That's the entire healing chapter, photographed from outside.
The hands chapter, confirmed by the glass. And Powell's little dream at the end of the chapter is lovely. He surmises that if Kilner's methods were improved, people might one day physically see the chakras themselves and the flow of prana, the whole shining anatomy on instruments. He left that door open for the future, and honestly, the biofield researchers and the Kirlian photographers and everyone since have been standing in that doorway.
So that's the outside road. Chapter 22 is the inside one, etheric faculties. And the definition is tidy. They're extensions of the ordinary senses, not new senses bolted on. The ones you have widened, so they register the etheric portion of the world. Etheric sight is the main one, working through the etheric matter of the ordinary retina. The dial moved.
And the chapter starts with a distinction that I think protects people, so let's make it carefully. There are two kinds of clairvoyance, and they are not the same thing and not equally desirable.
Right, the lower kind is a vague, massive sensitiveness. It belongs to the whole etheric body at once rather than to any organ. It's imprecise, it comes and goes, and crucially, it's practically beyond the person's control. It runs on the sympathetic nervous system, the old automatic wiring, and it's commonest where the analytical mind is least developed. The book notes it's frequent in animals. It tends to fade in a person as the mental faculties sharpen. And then, much later, as the spiritual life unfolds, clairvoyance returns, but remade into its higher kind, precise, exact, under the control of the will, switched on and off like focusing your eyes, worked through a proper sense organ on the cerebrospinal system.
So a hunch that happens to you versus a look that you take. And the direction of growth matters so much here, because the book is basically saying, if you've lost the vague sensitivity you had as a child or that runs in your family, you haven't necessarily gone backwards. That fading can be the path itself, the loose faculty dissolving so the willed one can eventually be built. The higher one is the one to want. And that's why, echoing the fire episode, the book is wary of every shortcut that flares the faculty artificially. Illness can do it, delirium can do it, certain drugs and rites can do it, mesmerism can do it. And it advises against the mesmeric route in particular, because handing your will to someone else over and over weakens the very thing the higher faculty is made of.
Never rent your will out. Though the chapter does include some gentler ways the faculty gets encouraged, and a couple of them are wonderful.
My favorite is the imagination method, which the book attributes to the Zuni people of the American Southwest. You take a closed box and you try to see what's inside. You guess with strained attention, really trying to picture the interior of a thing you cannot see. And you keep at it, patiently. And at some point, reportedly, the guessing starts beating chance. And then, somewhere further along, it stops being guessing. The imagination as the training wheels of the actual faculty. You pretend to see until the pretending becomes seeing, which suggests imagination was always closer to sight than we file it.
And there's Reichenbach, the Austrian baron and chemist, mid-1800s, who found that if ordinary people sat in complete darkness for a few hours to sensitize the retina, a surprising number of them, he counted over 60, could then see the mesmeric fluid streaming from a healer's hands. Some saw similar light off magnets, crystals, a copper wire with one end in sunlight. Dark adapt the eye far enough, and the etheric edge of things starts to glimmer through. The book ties this to the N-ray affair in France, scientists who could see the rays only after 3 or 4 hours in darkness, and it files N-rays boldly as vibrations of the etheric double, noting they're given off by living things and metals, that chloroform stops them, and that a corpse never emits them.
Because anesthetics push the etheric matter out, episode 1, and in a corpse, it's gone entirely. The book's system, tying up someone else's loose ends. Okay, now open the catalog. A person has the full, controlled higher sight. What does the world look like?
The catalog is glorious, so let's walk it. First, you see through things. A brick wall, the book says, has the consistency of light mist. You could read a sealed letter, find a passage in a closed book. Matter dims the view the way deep water does. Thickness matters, so it's not infinite, but solid stops being solid. The old investigator Stead coined a word for it that Powell adopts: thruth. Not length, not breadth, thruth.
Truth. I'm keeping that. And the rest of the catalog reads like a travel brochure for the widened eye. Second, the earth itself becomes see-intuable. Some way down, like looking into reasonably clear water. A vein of coal or metal below the surface. A creature burrowing along. Third, bodies. Human bodies become largely transparent. The organs visible in place and at work, so disease can be diagnosed by direct inspection. which closes the loop with Kilner perfectly. He was building, with glass, the crude version of exactly this. Fourth, entirely new colors. Colors with no names beyond the spectrum's ends, some woven into colors we do see, so two surfaces that match perfectly for us would differ to etheric sight. And fifth, the homely one. You'd see the health of a place and disease germs themselves, visible, avoidable.
New colors is the one that gets me. Not new arrangements, new colors.
And sixth, say the sixth one.
Sixth, the neighbors. Etheric sight makes visible the beings whose bodies are etheric, which, in the book's plain inventory, includes nearly all the fairies, the gnomes, the brownies, the nature spirits of every folklore that Northern Europe and everywhere else ever told stories about. It gives them an evolutionary lineage, seriously and matter-of-factly, a stream of life rising through the grasses and the cereals, through the ants and the bees, into the little etheric fairies, and onward, eventually, toward the great air spirits and the angels. The gnomes it describes living inside the rock itself, the stone no obstacle to them at all, and it notes they're shy. They dislike the emanations of meat and alcohol and tobacco. They dislike our lust and anger and gloom, and they love music. Leadbeater describes shepherd boys in Sicily playing panpipes with an audience of delighted fairies frisking around them, the boys blissfully unaware.
Every grandmother's fairy story, filed as natural history. And the tone really matters here, so let's keep it exactly where the book keeps it. No winking, no big breathless deal, just a catalog. The tradition says the world is way more crowded than our thin little band of seeing lets us notice. And these stories stuck around because every now and then, at dusk, with the right eyes, somebody actually saw. And those old tales about rubbing an ointment on your eyes to see the fairy folk? The book gives those a basis in truth, too. Something you put on the physical eye could really stir up its etheric matter.
And then the chapter's last marvel, the one we've owed you since episode 3. Magnification. The brow center's strange gift. Etheric sight can change scale. The simpler method focuses consciousness into just a few etheric particles of the retina, making the instrument small enough to perceive the tiny as though enlarged. But the developed method is the one that sounds like science fiction written in 1925. A flexible tube of etheric matter is projected from the center between the eyebrows, with a single atom at its tip serving as a lens. An atom with all 7 of its spirals fully developed, functioning as an eyepiece. It can be expanded or contracted at will, magnify or diminish, and further, the whole tube can be projected, extended to distant points, and looked through from here.
A living microscope, a living telescope, grown from the forehead at will. And the detail that makes it archaeology as much as anatomy. The book says this exact power is what's symbolized by the little snake rearing from the center of the pharaoh's forehead on the royal headdress of Egypt. The uraeus. 4,000 years of statues wearing a diagram of the projected tube, like the barber's pole, like the Buddha's flame. The old images keep turning out to be documentation.
The book's quiet running theme. And for completeness, the chapter notes etheric telepathy working through the pineal gland. If you think intently enough, you can feel the faint quiver of it in the head, the organ of thought transference not yet fully evolved in most of us. And, in one throwaway sentence that I refuse to leave out, it mentions there is a known process by which light can be bent around an object and made to resume its course, rendering the object invisible. 18 words, tossed off, and it's a working description of what optics now calls cloaking.
This book keeps doing that. Okay, one clean distinction to close the chapter, because people blur these two and the book is careful. Etheric sight versus astral sight. They are not grades of the same thing, they're different in kind. Astral sight adds a dimension. The book's image is a cube seen from every side at once and from within. Etheric sight adds no dimension at all. It simply sees through. And the thicker the matter, the dimmer the view. Like water. Truth. So etheric sight is our sight, widened. Astral sight is another geometry altogether. And that one belongs to another body and another book.
Which is the next Powell volume, in fact, the astral body, the next layer out, where Pillar 5 may well wander in time. But we have one more episode of this one first, and it's a beauty to end on. Chapter 23, The Magnetization of Objects. Why a grandmother's ring, a talisman, a cathedral, holy water, actually carry what they carry in this book's terms. And then Powell's own conclusion, where he looks out at everything this research could become, and we close the whole series.
The Charged World and the Open Door. Bring something that matters to you next time. You'll hear it differently. And if this kind of thing speaks to you, this show is part of a growing family of shows over at Pillar 5 Media.
Different hosts, different books, all of us taking something deep and trying to make it feel a bit more like a conversation with a friend.
You'll find all of them at pillar5media.com.
And that's pillar, then the number 5 as a numeral, media.com.
Thanks for widening the dial with us today. Sit in the dark a little while this week and see what glimmers.
And be kind to the bees. They see runways we'll never see. Catch you at the finale.